been an advocate of separating CERS from KRS since I was a Metro councilman in Louisville. With my background as was originally a CPA, I was looking at the budget the first year I was on the budget committee in Louisville, and it was clear that this is a mess. This is a crisis. The cost is doubling every 6 or 7 years, so it's not a sustainable system. I felt at the time and still feel that the cost of the KRS machine, if you will, is being unduly borne by the cities and counties in terms of CERS is paying a disproportionate amount of the expenses for the operation. The state has a problem. We need to address the problem. In my view, it's best if we separate them and focus on the real problem. And CERS isn't the real problem here. I don't believe he will actually issue the call until he feels that we have some level of agreement and can pass. It's the worst thing in the world is, as past governors have found out, is call a special session and they can't agree to do anything. It's embarrassing for everyone. Taxpayers are mad, as well they should be. So I think we'll get an agreement, handshake agreement, before the call is issued. We've got to be competitive. Being competitive means you can't willy-nilly raise taxes because our tax system is already we're not in the good half. We're in the half that is high taxes. We're not among the highest taxers, but we are higher than average, and we're higher than many of our peer states and our contiguous states. When you talk about restaurant taxes, you talk about hotel taxes, I think that's where the discussion needs to happen, is let's build that into tax reform so that the cities and counties can have more control over their revenue streams. We need to revisit the 70-year-old formula of fifths. I proposed a bill last session that would do that. It would have a hold harmless in terms of small rural county revenues. They wouldn't go down. The growth would go to those that had the lane miles and the traffic mileage, which to me is where it should be, because that's where the revenue is coming from. The revenue is coming from people that are driving, and cities and municipalities, urban areas, they have a lot of lane miles, they have a lot of cars, they have a lot of gas tax, and we've got to proportion that out in a logical manner that reflects that. At the end of the day, you've got a $50+ billion problem, and how do we raise revenue to meet that? Because I think the best numbers I've seen are we need upwards of $700 million additional to what we put in last budget, and last budget was more money than we've ever put into the pensions. So to the extent that we don't bleed everything else dry, we're going to have new revenue. In my view, and this is just Jerry Miller speaking, not as state government chair or speaking for leadership, but in my view, it's going to be very difficult to get 60 votes in the House to increase for anything that looks or smells like a tax increase. And for that reason, Senator Morgan McGarvey and I have proposed that the voters be allowed to vote on an amendment, a constitutional amendment to expand gaming. Now, I don't gamble. I don't think it's a great idea for people, but people do, and it's a free country, and I believe in individual liberty. And if they want to drive to Indiana and Ohio and wherever else they can find a casino, Illinois, Mississippi, we're surrounded by them virtually. If they want to do that, that's their freedom to do that. But it's not a very smart thing to do to let all that revenue go to those other governments and pay for their government services and for their pensions. What I think we need to do is capture that money. Now, how much is it? Is it enough to resolve the whole issue? I don't think so, but it's at least $250 million a year. Could be upwards of $700 million a year. But we should at least let the voters decide, do they want to expand it or not? Sitting in church, I think about it. Because, you see the person next door is a retired teacher, this person's a retired highway worker. And these people are dependent on those checks. We need to be sensitive to the fact that we've got a lot of people out there in Kentucky that are dependent on that monthly retirement check, and we can't pull the rug out from under them. For someone to be a public safety officer, risk their lives for 20 or more years on the assumption they're going to receive a pension benefit at the end as compensation for risking their lives so that their families are taken care of, I'd feel bad about doing anything that impacted that in a material way.